What's up, Mavs fans? Welcome into NBA Now from Chat Sports. I'm your host, Jimmy Crowther, breaking down all the latest going on with the Dallas Mavericks. And if you haven't already, I want to make sure you hit that subscribe button on the link down below. And you go to youtube.com/allthingsmavs. You're going to find our All Things Dallas Mavericks channel. Now, start off with Courtney Lee here because we got some unfortunate news yesterday out of Dallas that Lee is out for the remainder of the season when we get going again in Orlando. He injured his calf in what they called a freak accident during his time in quarantine, and during the NBA's hiatus, there was no real details on what happened or how it happened, but whatever happened, it required season-ending surgery, and he already did that during his time off. Now, the thing about Courtney Lee is that he will be an unrestricted free agent this summer. So what the Mavs could do is go ahead and waive him and open up a roster spot for someone else to come in and play, because Courtney Lee is going to be out, and there's really no reason to keep him on this roster unless you're just scared to eat some of his money next season. Now, Courtney Lee didn't play a whole lot throughout the entire year, but in the last month leading up to the NBA's hiatus of March, he looked pretty good. He played in 7 games for the Mavs, and he started 5 of those 7 games. Now, his numbers weren't super great. He was averaging 6.6 points per game, nearly 2 rebounds, but good three-point shooter at 47%. Now, he wasn't taking a ton. He only took about 20 in that time as a starter or as a player in 7 games. But the biggest thing about Courtney Lee going down is that he is the 3rd straight Dallas Maverick that's going to be lost due to injury when they return to play in Orlando. Courtney Lee, obviously, like I just said, he's got the calf injury. Jalen Brunson, who a lot of you guys didn't know this when I mentioned it on Twitter, but Brunson did hurt his shoulder. He had season-ending shoulder surgery. He will not be back when the Mavs pick up play again. And then, of course, Dwight Powell tore his Achilles earlier in the season. Now, here's the thing. You're not going to waive Jalen Brunson, and you're not going to waive Dwight Powell because you just re-signed Powell to a contract extension. Jalen Brunson is a good young piece for the future. Really, the only guy you're going to waive here is Courtney Lee. I say go ahead and waive him. I liked him in the locker room, but again, there's just no reason to keep him around if he can't play in Orlando. So who are the Mavs going to miss the most when the season returns? You can choose any of the 3 that are going to be out. And here's the reason. I'll lay out all the reasons they're going to miss all 3 of them. Courtney Lee, great locker room presence, stepped up when needed, but not all that great of a player at this point in his career. Jalen Brunson, the backup point guard. I'm going to miss him the most personally because we got him a good chunk of the season, and then we lost him due to that shoulder injury. Now, Dwight Powell, we've gotten used to playing without him. So, yes, we miss his lob threat ability, but we know how to play without Dwight Powell. So, I think the guy I'm going to miss the most is Jalen Brunson, but maybe you've got a different guy in mind. Now, the reason the Mavs are going to have to waive Courtney Lee is because the NBA made some roster rules that says even if a guy's injured, you can't bring in an extra roster or an extra player just because you got a hurt guy. The only way that roster spots are going to open up for teams to make moves during this transaction window is if a player opts out of playing in Orlando, which we've seen some guys like Trevor Ariza do already. If they test positive for the virus, which we should be getting test results here within the next day or so. And then another one is if they're excused due to health reasons. So if they have a weak immune system already, if they've got some pre-existing, problems with their health and they can't play, teams can sign an additional player. They opted not to expand rosters this season because I had mentioned it on a lot of shows that the NBA was looking at opening up a couple extra roster spots. They said, no, we're not going to do that. If you've got 15 players and 2 two-way contracts, which the Mavs do, you've already got a full roster. So the only way the Mavs can open up a roster spot now is if Courtney Lee gets waived, if a player opts out on the roster, which I don't anticipate, if someone tests positive for the virus or they're excused due to health. Now, let's say they waive Courtney Lee and they open up a roster spot. Who are they going to bring in? I'm saying Ryan Broekhoff. Now, of course, he was waived by the Dallas Mavericks earlier this year to make room for Michael Kidd-Gilchrist because he didn't have a lot of guaranteed money. A lot of people thought Courtney Lee might be the guy they waived, but the thing was Broekhoff's money wasn't guaranteed, so he was the easiest to waive. Now, we remember in his time with Dallas, he was a knockdown shooter. He looked absolutely incredible, lights out from the corner, from the top of the key, wherever you needed a three-point shot, he was going to knock it down. Now, the thing about Broekhoff is that outside of shooting, he doesn't do a whole lot. 4.2 points per game, 2.5 boards, 39% from 3 in his time this year with the Dallas Mavericks. Now, originally I had said the Mavs should bring in Devin Harris to make up for the loss of Jalen Brunson, but now that Courtney Lee's out, I'm saying we get a bigger wing. We bring back Ryan Broekhoff, and I think a lot of Mavs fans would be happy with that potential addition, or should I say re-addition to the Dallas Mavericks, because We love Broekhoff, and I would love to see him back in a Mavericks uniform. Thanks to our friends over at Fanatics. When you go to chatsports.com/MavsMask1, you can get this great customized Dallas Mavericks mask to keep yourself safe and healthy. It ships in just 2 business days, and a lot of the proceeds go to feeding America. So you're going to want to make sure you go to chatsports.com/MavsMask1 because they're keeping you safe and healthy, and they're doing it for a good cause, which is feeding America. So thanks to our friends over at Fanatics. Now, another thing about Ryan Broekhoff, we talked about him being a great shooter, but in his rookie season, so not this past year, but his first year with the Mavs, he was one of the top 5 rookies of three-point percentage. Now, these guys are the rookie shooters who made at least 53-pointers in their rookie year. Duncan Robinson came out of nowhere, splashed down 43.8% of his threes. Shake Milton of the 76ers, 41.3%, followed by Landry Shamet, who was actually with the Sixers a little bit, and then the Clippers in his rookie year at 41%. And then you've got Ryan Broekhoff, a 40% three-point shooter in his rookie year. Didn't play a ton in the first half, but the back half of the year, after the Mavs traded for Porzingis and were looking closer to the lottery, Broekhoff got a lot of minutes, and he shot really, really well. So, yeah, I'd like to see him back in Dallas. But there are some other names out there, some guys that I've talked about on this show before, talked about on my All Things Mavs channel, which if you're not subscribed, go hit that subscribe button right now. But Devin Harris, Ryan Broekhoff, Tyler Johnson, Jamal Crawford, Gerald Green. Those are the 5 guys that I think the Mavs will look at the closest that are current free agents that the Mavs could consider. Devin Harris and Broekhoff probably being the top 2 because they already know the Mavs system, and it makes a lot of sense to go ahead and bring those guys back. But maybe there's a name in there that I didn't mention that you say, hey, this guy would work really well for the Mavs. Who might that be that could replace Courtney Lee? A guy who I'm going to talk about on my All Things Mavs channel later this week is Justin Anderson, another former Maverick currently in the G League. But if you got some other names, let me know in the comment section below. If you want to see all the names I lay out, you want to see my breakdown of Justin Anderson or Ryan Broekhoff or what the injury means for the Mavs of Courtney Lee, go be our 3,000th subscriber on that All Things Mavs channel. We're a young channel. We're brand new. We keep on growing thanks to you guys. So youtube.com/AllThingsMavs. You're going to want to go hit that subscribe button because we've got daily Dallas Mavericks content coming your way. Now, let's talk about another little rumor here for the Dallas Mavs. Could they be making a trade for a star player? Well, here's the deal. Mavs have limited cap space this summer, especially if Tim Hardaway Jr. decides to opt into that contract. He will take up a good chunk of the cap space. So really what Dallas will be looking to do this summer is add wings and add playmakers, whether it's via the draft or whether they make a trade. There are a lot of options for the Mavs to make an improvement. But 2 guys that I'm going to talk about right now are Bradley Beal and CJ McCollum. Michael Shapiro on the Mavs Next Move said this of Sports Illustrated. He said this: though he has expressed continued commitment to Washington, as would fellow 2-guard CJ McCollum, expect Dallas to have heavy interest in the next superstar who enters trade rumors. Now, if it's Bradley Beal or CJ McCollum, Mavs fans should be hyped because these guys are superstars. They are great players, and they would fit really well next to Luka Doncic. But if you can only choose one, I want you to let me know which one you would rather have, CJ McCollum or Bradley Beal. I like them both a lot. I think CJ is the better playmaker. So I'm actually going to go with CJ McCollum here of the Portland Trail Blazers. So let's dive in a little bit more into him. He's an elite scorer. He's a great playmaker. He's going to fit next to Luka absolutely beautifully if that were to happen. But the reason he might be on the block is because his fit next to Damian Lillard might be in question. The prime time of their duo was really great. It was a lot of fun. They made some really fun runs in the playoffs, but let's be honest, that defensive backcourt gets absolutely torched. They just get torched every night. And CJ McCollum might want the ball in his hands a little bit more than he gets it with Damian Lillard. And CJ's a great player. I mean, he has been so consistent over the past 4 years, averaging right around 22 points per game, 4 rebounds, and 3 assists nearly every single season for the past 4 seasons. So maybe he's ready to see a little bit of a jump in his game. And the way to do that might be leaving Portland. I mean, I got to be honest. I think he'd have more playmaking responsibilities in Dallas to take the load off Luka Doncic than he would in Portland. So I came up with a trade scenario, and a lot of y'all are going to hate me for this because a lot of y'all are Dallas Mavericks fans and you love Dorian Finney-Smith and you love Tim Hardaway Jr. I love both of those guys too. But if you want to get something good, you got to give up something really good. And that's what the Mavs do in this scenario that I cooked up. Here the Mavs get CJ McCollum and they trade Tim Hardaway Jr., that's assuming, of course, he opts into that deal, Dorian Finney-Smith, Justin Jackson, and the 2020 first-round pick that the Mavs own. So, of course, this couldn't happen until draft night or after draft night. But if the Mavs want to get CJ, I think you got to give up at least one of Dorian Finney-Smith or Maxi Kleber and one of Tim Hardaway Jr. or Seth Curry. And since Portland's already had Seth Curry, I think Tim Hardaway Jr. makes the most sense to give up here. So who do you think says no? I know the Mavs fans might say Dallas and the Portland fans might say Portland, but I mean, this is a pretty darn good trade if you ask me for both sides. Now, Bradley Beal is the other guy that was mentioned here, and Beal has been great in Washington, but he's not expected to actually get traded. There were a lot of trade rumors earlier this summer about him getting moved, and that just never happened. And honestly, the Mavs probably don't even have the pieces to make it happen. They probably don't have the pieces to make it happen to get CJ McCollum either, but I just don't expect either of these guys to get moved to Dallas. Now, Beal would be the perfect third star next to Luka and Porzingis because he's a great shooter. He doesn't need the ball in his hands to succeed. This year for Washington, he's been absolutely amazing. He's been averaging 28 points per game, 7 assists, and 4 rebounds. Three-point percentage isn't great, but he shoots so many threes that the efficiency just takes a little bit of a dip. So I've mentioned this trade on All Things Mavs before, so I'm going to mention it again. And again, the Mavs fans are going to be mad at me, and I get it. But again, you got to give something up good to get something really good. And that's what the Mavs are doing here. You're giving up Seth Curry, Maxi Kleber, Boban, and Justin Jackson, and 2 draft picks for Bradley Beal. So it's a lot. I get it. It is a lot to give up. It's more to give up here than it is to get CJ McCollum because I don't think Washington wants to trade Bradley Beal at all, whereas Portland might be a little bit more willing. So who says no to this trade? Is it Washington or is it Dallas? Also, let me know who says no in that Portland and Dallas trade in the comment section down below. Mavs fans, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.